want to talk now about some of these far-right groups with Randy Blazak, head of the Oregon Coalition Against Hate Crime. He joins us now via Skype. Thank you so much for being with us.
Glad to be here.
Now, you are based in Portland, where you have watched all of this play out, of course, the deadly violence on the weekend, then the mayor accusing the US president of fanning hate and violence, and the president striking back. What impact is all this having on the city and the way people feel about the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite strange to be in the center of this conversation, but in a way, it's a great opportunity for Portland to make its case. But the city of Portland has a long history of violence between racists and anti-racists, including a racist skinhead that was murdered by an anti-racist skinhead in 1993. And so these clashes are nothing new to the city. What is new is how this is playing out as part of this national dialogue we're having about race and policing, and the fact that the president has engaged in this debate in the city just kind of brings up the tension level that we're experiencing. And it always seems like it's about to sort of fade off, and then something happens to reignite the protest, and we're back at square one all over again.
Right, and how is political extremism and racism changing the tenor of protests in Portland and in Kenosha?
Yeah, the Northwest has had a history all of its own of white supremacists sort of claim the Northwest as their homeland. In fact, there's been a movement to secede from the rest of the country and create a white homeland in America. And some of these groups have been showing up at these protests, so militia groups and Patriot Prayer and Proud Boys. And these white supremacist groups have often served to agitate. Many of them want more chaos. They want things to sort of collapse so they can have their civil war, the boogaloo as they call it now. So it's made things a lot more confusing, I think, to the average person watching the chaos. It seems like it's sort of protesters versus the police, but there's a whole bunch of actors involved in this, including some of those who are coming from the right to attack the left because it adds to the chaos, which helps feed their narrative. And I think that's what the president is sort of feeding off of this chaos. He feels like the pro-Trump anti-Black Lives folks are somehow going to bring law and order back to the city, but in fact, it's just adding to the mayhem.
Right, and Randy, let's talk about what's behind the actions of Trump supporters like Kyle Rittenhouse, who's charged with shooting and killing 2 protesters in Kenosha, and other pro-Trump demonstrators who were showing up in Portland to cause trouble. And what can you tell us about Patriot Prayer, the group the Portland shooting victim was said to have been a member of?
Yeah, this is a strange group that's been around for a while, and in fact, led by a biracial individual who would not seem to be a white supremacist, but they've attracted a lot of white supremacists, mainly through their anti-immigrant rhetoric. I mean, that's sort of the calling card of Patriot Prayers. They're very strongly anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim, which has served to bring in old-fashioned white supremacists to their cause. And so while on the forefront they seem to be a sort of First Amendment free speech conservative movement, they've actually sort of created a cover for a lot of more traditional white supremacist movements to march through the streets of Portland. And then the counter protests have often been violent when they do march through the streets of Portland. So what we saw yesterday in the city was kind of, you know, the culmination of all that tension that's building up in the city for years.
So how worried should some protest leaders be that they're actually giving the president exactly what he wants as he tries to pivot away from COVID-19 and racism to the issue of law and order, with some voters so scared when they see cities ablaze and being looted that this actually becomes their top issue and they'll vote on law and order?
Well, this was Richard Nixon's play in 1968 to be the law and order president who is going to clamp down on the urban jungle, as he called it, the riots of the 1960s. America has changed a lot since 1968. We have a lot of people who are of different backgrounds. The suburbs are no longer white only, and there's a lot of sympathy for the cause of Black Lives Matter movements. And so I don't know if it'll have the same traction that Nixon had in 1968, but it's certainly something to rally the folks that see America changing too quickly and are afraid that their country is burning to the ground. And in Portland, it's pretty. I don't want to say comical, but it's a little strange because it's sort of a normal city. It's just there are these little pockets where things happen, but Portland is far from burning to the ground. I still think it's one of the most livable cities in the country. But if you turn on the evening news, you get these very dire pictures of what's happening in Portland. And we're basically just going out for sushi, wondering what everybody's screaming about.
Yeah, of course. Randy Blazak, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Sure thing.